Do you feel like you're constantly juggling business and life, but sometimes you're always dropping the ball, never getting to the end of your to-do list or actually achieving the goals you have? Like, I can fully relate. It always feels like I'm chasing my tail on something. And in today's episode of the Remote CEO Life podcast, we're going to talk about exactly how you can overcome that, because I'm joined today by Sue Richards. She's a coach, a mentor, a speaker, and host of the PEP Talks podcast. Sue helps ambitious female business owners reduce mental load, reclaim energy, and finally ditch the overwhelm so they can create space, not just for business and family, but also for themselves. Through mindset shifts, sustainable habits, and energy management, Sue supports women to build a life that aligns with their values, not one that burns them out. So I'm super excited about this conversation today. As you know, I have been through my own burnouts many times. And because I was focused on the wrong things, I wasn't focusing on the things that were moving the needle. I was focusing on all of the things that I thought I should be doing to grow this business. But actually, sometimes what we think we should be focusing on and what we should be focusing on are very different things. And today we're going to be speaking about the subjects that we should be focusing on in our business to actually move the needle and drive our business forward rather than getting stuck in the weeds of the day to day. And Sue's going to give us some really practical advice on how to actually manage that. So let's dig into the episode. Welcome to the Remote CEO Life podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Sophie?
I'm good, thanks. Excited for our chat today. Do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and your background and kind of where you're at today?
Yeah, sure. So I am a coach, mentor, speaker, and podcast host, and I work with self-employed mums, ambitious self-employed mums who have big goals for their business, but also want to be amazing mums as well. And I help them, in essence, I help them steer clear of burnout. So I talk about ditching overwhelm, minimizing mental load, and carving out more time and energy for the things that they want to do within their lives, whilst also fulfilling their desire to be a brilliant mum and a brilliant business owner.
Amazing. And how did you come to this place?
Well, I think it all started in sort of in this area when I was about 12, which is a little bit bizarre because most 12-year-olds don't have a goal of working with self-employed mums and helping them avoid burnout. But I could see my dad was heading down that route of burnout. He was in a really high stress job, high pressure, constantly trying to prove himself. I'm not entirely sure to who, but he was definitely trying to prove himself all the time and, try and get to the next goal and the next thing and do the next thing. And he was a busy man, a busy man. And I told him when I was 12 that he would die before he retired if he carried on how he was living his life, because within that chronic stress and that high pressure environment, he was not looking after himself very well. His health habits were not perhaps where they should have been. And sadly, he followed through on my message and passed away when he was 56 of a heart attack. Even when I was 12, I knew I wanted to help people live longer, healthier lives. And my idea at the time, with little knowledge about the coaching world when you're 12, was to go into medical research. So I did a degree, a science degree, about the human body, with the intention to then do a PhD and go on into medical research. That never happened. But when I then hit 40, I'd lost myself as a mum. My energy was rock bottom. I'd lost my confidence. I'd lost my sense of self. And I'd also gained a bit of weight. So I know this is a sort of like slightly roundabout story, but I promise you I'll get to where I'm going. I retrained as a personal trainer and a nutritionist in my early 40s, having found the power of regular movement and eating well for my own energy levels, my own confidence, my self-esteem, and also simply my patience with my kids. Because I was looking after me, I had more time and energy for my children. And then since then, I've been working in that field of sort of health and fitness. But what I've realized as I've been coaching clients with health and fitness is actually there's a massive hustle culture. There's a lot of self-employed people, full stop, out there, and employed people for that matter, who are hustling and grinding and constantly trying to get to the next thing and the next level and prove themselves worthy of something or other. And they probably don't realize that's what's going on, but that's what I see. And as I was coaching people with more of the health and fitness side of things, I realized that a lot of limiting beliefs were holding people back. And so my business has sort of evolved over the last 10 or 11 years to work more in the deeper layers of digging into why the women I work with, who are intelligent women, who know that they need to look after their health, who know they need to prioritize their sleep, who know they should be eating a nourishing diet, why aren't they doing that? And so I dig in and help them suss that out, really. So I bring my health and wellness background in, but I also work on mindset shifts too. So we talk a lot about habit change, but also mindset shifts too.
Incredible. Wow, that is a very impressive story that it kind of all started when you were 12. And it's very interesting actually, because I actually recorded a podcast yesterday and this lady was a productivity coach. And I said, oh, where did this like first come from? She was like, when I was 12. I'm like, this is so interesting that actually it's coming from like something that's so far before you got to this stage of your life and you're able to bring that into your world now. I think that that's super, super powerful. And it's obviously from like a difficult circumstance that you saw your dad going through that. That's not ideal for any 12-year-old to see that. But you've been able to turn that into your superpower of like helping people and get through that burnout. Because, and I can speak for myself, like I've experienced actually 4 burnouts in the past, well, probably in the past like 8 years, most of them when I started my business, and some of them completely wiped me out. They floored me. I couldn't work for months actually because I wasn't looking after myself. And I fully agree with you that we are always trying to achieve something based on what our limiting beliefs or our self-worth is telling us. And it's obviously all coming from a subconscious place. And I've done a hell of a lot of subconscious reprogramming work over the past 3 years, particularly since my last burnout. And I haven't had one for 3 years, thank God. So I must be going in the right direction. But it's very difficult because you need a really high level of self-awareness to recognize why the burnout is happening. So having somebody like yourself to reflect that back and look into that and delve into it a little bit deeper is really powerful, and definitely something that I didn't have and didn't know that I could have back then when I was experiencing the burnout. Because actually when you're in the burnout, you because of these limiting beliefs, you're like, well, no, this isn't happening to me. Like I can get through this. Like I can just keep going in the way that I was living my life before. But actually, if you're having 4 burnouts in a certain period of time, something has to change. And it took me a really long time, to the point where I had long COVID in 2022. 2022? Yeah, 2022. And it completely wiped me out. And I would almost say that long COVID that I had was actually more like a burnout, where it just completely floored me. And wasn't until that point that I was like, oh, I really have to make a change here, because if I don't, then I am going to go on a path of self-destruction. Basically, I'm doing this at this point to myself, and I was just overworking and overworking. So I totally can see how people can get themselves into that state. And I also can see the health effects that has had on me. Like even now, I told you before we entered this recording that I've just started a detox, right? So partly that detox is because my stress levels have been so chronic for the past like however many years, probably most of my life, I've had quite high stress levels, that it has impacted me so much from like a hormone imbalance. I have really severe allergies, and it's all because of my gut health. And obviously your stress levels impact your gut health. So I'm now having to do, at the age, I'm 33, so I'm not old, but like I'm still like halfway into my 30s almost, and I'm having to go back and do like reverse work of all of the silly things that I did as a younger 20-something-year-old to push through all of these burnouts, and having to deal with that now in my body. So I totally understand the need to eliminate these self-beliefs so that you can get through these burnouts, or like not have the burnouts happen, basically.
Yeah, so my mission is to try and grab people before they get there. So they can spot that they're heading in the direction of burnout. I don't want anybody to get to the point of burnout, because as you know, it's not a good place to be. I've had a couple of burnouts myself where I've literally stopped my business for periods of time, which is quite upsetting actually, because I know that this is what I've been put on this planet to do. And I know that sounds really woo, but every time I pause my business or close my business down, I think that's it. I'm just gonna go back to like regular paid work. A year or so later, I'm like, something pulls me back, and I just keep getting pulled back to it. And I just keep thinking back to that 12-year-old who was like, I'm going to make people, I'm going to not make people, I'm going to help people live longer lives. And it's clearly, literally, as I say, like the reason I've been put on this planet is to help people do that. So I don't want people to get to the point where they're having to burn their business to the ground in order to look after themselves. I want them to be looking after themselves so they don't have to burn their business to the ground, and take those steps as they start to recognize that they're heading down a spiral that's not one they can get out of easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in this circumstance, prevention is going to be so much better than, all right, in most things, prevention is better than cure. But obviously, I think sometimes burnout creeps up on us and we don't even realize it because of the limiting beliefs and the self-worth thing that you mentioned earlier. And I noticed that you talk a lot about kind of minimizing mental load and maximizing energy. So I'd be really interested to hear your take on, like, how do we do that? How do we prevent the burnout? Like, what steps do we need to take to before we even get there?
So I believe those two things go hand in hand. So if we can minimize the mental load, we naturally maximize our energy, because certainly the clients I work with, they are juggling a huge amount, right? So this is not to put any disrespect to anybody who's in an employed position or anybody who's not a mum. As you've just explained, you yourself, Sophie, you've got yourself into that position of pushing and pushing and pushing and hitting the burnouts. But the people I work with, the ladies I work with, they have the juggle of the motherhood and the business. And then somewhere in the way, they get lost down the gap in the middle. But because they've got the business and motherhood to juggle, their mental load is particularly high because they're trying to keep on top of literally everything. They've got all these like plates up in the air that they're spinning. And so I honestly believe that if they can let go of some of that stuff, either by literally letting go of it, ditching it completely, or by finding somebody who can support them and help them and actually do that for them. So whether that's outsourcing to a paid service, whether it's asking your partner to help you, whether it's asking your kids to help you, whether it's asking your parents to help you, or grandparents or friends or anybody, asking for help is one of the biggest steps we can take as women. And I do think that, and I've been there, right? I'm speaking a lot from experience. A lot of my coaching work comes from my own lived experience. But as strong, independent, ambitious women who have big goals for ourselves, we find it really, really hard to ask for help because we see it as a weakness, as a failure, and I should be able to do this all on my own. But we were never designed to do it all on our own. You know, if you think back into, my grandparents' generation, so sort of the pre-war babies, they would have all lived very close to their grandparents and possibly even their great grandparents. They would have effectively had a village, a community around them, so that when mum can't do stuff, grandma can step in. And we don't really have that in modern society anymore. We're so sort of scattered around. I was going to say the UK, but the world. I mean, you're in Thailand and I'm here in Devon and we're still chatting with each other. That village and that community, we don't have that support network, so we have to go and find it, whoever that is that we have to help us. But we have to be willing to ask for help. People won't know we need the help unless we tell them. I think we have this perception that if we just look like we're struggling, somebody's going to come and pick up the pieces. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. We have to be the ones to take the lead. So I think that's a massive step, is asking for help. I think we also have to accept that we can't do everything perfectly either. So again, a lot of the clients I work with come to me not really realizing that they are massive perfectionists, and it's really impacting on the energy they're putting into stuff and the time they're putting into stuff. So they're probably putting more time into things than they actually need to, putting more pressure on themselves than they actually need to, when they could still achieve the same outcome with a slightly imperfect solution. So I really support my clients in taking small, simple steps to still get to where they want to go, rather than worrying about like the top of the mountain, but actually thinking about, right, what's the next step? But with that sort of to-do list, also, and prioritizing what needs to be done as well. So there's loads of stuff we can do to minimize that mental load. I mean, it's a massive topic, but if we can get a few things off our list in whatever way we do that, whether, as I say, it's completely letting go of stuff, and sometimes that might be a relationship that you need to let go of, which is really damn hard. But ultimately, if you're stuck in a spiral of overwhelm and mental overload and exhaustion, that's pretty hard too. So making these short-term difficult decisions is going to make life so much easier in the long run. So sometimes we have to just suck it up for the short term to come out stronger on the other side. And then, yeah, maximizing energy. Well, that comes, as I say, from minimizing the mental load, but also from making sure we prioritize our sleep, eating well, moving our bodies on a regular basis, drinking plenty of water, literally the foundations of our health. Nothing fancy, no clever tricks or magic pills are needed. We just need to get back to basics. And so often when we're trying to achieve so much, we forget the basics, and those foundational health habits also slip down the gap.
Yeah, it's like the first thing to go, isn't it? When you're stressed, when you're overworked, you let go of all of the personal care, self-care activities. Even some people don't shower, for example, because they haven't got time in the day, or they don't go to the gym, or they don't go out and leave their house for the day. And I think from my experience, I feel like environment has a really big part to play in that. And if you are in the wrong environment, surrounded by, I don't know, like hustle culture, people that are doing something completely different to you, that aren't that supportive of you, or you're in central London, for example, where it's 100 miles an hour, when you're in those environments, it's that can shift your whole dynamic. Like, you will just mold into the environment that you are into. Whereas, and I'm not saying go to the extreme of me where I've moved to a tiny little island in Thailand, but like, I've moved into a Thailand island because it gives me a slower pace of life. Like, I can go on a beach walk in the morning. I can go to the gym because everything here is catered around wellness. I have chosen to put myself in environments that support my well-being, so that I don't feel the need to work 13-hour days like I was when I was in London, because actually I couldn't afford to go out and go and do things in the evening because it's so expensive. Whereas I've put myself in an environment that allows me to, one, show up really authentically as myself and be able to do all the things that I love to do, and to just like nurture me, make me feel like I can actually take time for myself, because it's important. And there's so many things that I want to go and do here that take me away from my business, give me that distraction and that permission slip to go and take those times away. And I think your environment has a really, really big impact on that. And I also love what you said around high achievers asking for help, or find asking for help really difficult. Like, I definitely relate to that. Like, it's definitely something that I've had to learn how to do. Even if someone just naturally tries to help me, I'm like, oh, no, it's okay. Don't carry my suitcase. Let me just struggle with this up the stairs. And like, actually, no, like, now I'm trying to surrender a little bit more into like people helping me and asking for help, particularly in my business, because I'm 5 years into business at this point, and I've always had a low level of support in terms of a VA helping me do scheduling, things like that. But I'm starting to recognize that actually, for me to get to the next level in my business, I need to ask for some serious help. Like, really, really somebody that can guide me, hold me accountable, that can do some bigger tasks that I very well know that I'm not good at, and could offload it onto somebody else. But there's a huge mindset shift around that. And there's also, like what you mentioned earlier, the limiting beliefs that come into play, right? That we can do it all ourselves, and I don't need help because I can do these things. Talk me through a little bit about some of the limiting beliefs that you see that hold people back the most when it comes to this subject.
So, well, one of them is I can do it on my own. And linked to that is I'll do it better than somebody else. So I need to do it because I'll do it better, because the
Guilty.
perfectionist in us feeds into that. And I mean, I'm guilty of this, right? I'm definitely guilty of this. Like, if my husband does like cleaning around the house, it's not done how I would do it. And I have to just sort of take a deep breath and thank him for doing the bits that he's doing, because that is supportive. But there's still a little like niggle that's like, that's not how I would have done it. So, but we have to embrace that, right? We have to embrace that. Otherwise, we will always be trying to do it all ourselves. And as we've just said, that is not possible. So, yeah, I can do it all on my own, and I do it better than everybody else. They're the first two. I get a lot of people pleasing showing up with people, and they'll often say they're not people pleasers and they have great boundaries in place. And then when we dig deeper, I'm like, but hold on a minute. You're spending time with people that drain your energy. You're saying yes to that thing over there, which means you're saying no to that thing over there. And that thing over there is the thing that you really want to be doing. So whilst, yes, you're quite happy to do the thing you've said yes to, it's actually taking you away from the thing that you really want to be doing. So a lot of people pleasing, a lot of perfectionist tendencies coming into play, a lot of good girl attitudes. So, you know, and a lot of not using our voices, so that the whole like little girls should be seen and not heard adage coming through a lot. And I think that again links to the asking for help thing. And then I guess the final one, which again we've already touched on really, is the need to prove ourselves, to feel worthy by proving ourselves of achieving something. Or I had one client recently who only felt good at the end of the day if she'd ticked things off her to-do list. Now, bear in mind, she was the finance director of her own company. She was doing like admin tasks, really, really basic admin tasks, because it gave her the dopamine hit of ticking off the easy jobs from the list, which meant she was never ever getting to the strategic stuff, because the strategic stuff she knew would take longer and she would potentially fail at in her eyes. So her perfectionist in her and her need to have felt a sense of achievement at the end of every day meant she stayed in the weeds of her business rather than actually doing the stuff that would move her business forward. Big ones to change, but it is possible. You just need some support to do it. I honestly don't think you can do that sort of deep work on your own. Not fully. You can get started for sure, but to really make changes and actually implement the changes that you know you need to make, that's where having somebody in your back pocket lovingly kicking you up the arse and reminding you of what you're aiming for is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, is yeah, that one's such a big one. Like definitely the one around being seen and not heard, and like asking and speaking up, sharing your voice, and saying all of the things that you know you should be saying. But then also that element of you're almost procrastinating on the small tasks that really are not going to move the needle in your business. I am so guilty of this, and I don't necessarily think it's from like a tick it off of the to-do list piece, like, but it's I think it's actually what I've come down to, because again, I've done like quite a lot of this limiting belief work, and I do a lot of like subconscious reprogramming work, but I put it down to the fact that I'm actually scared of success. So sometimes I will postpone the big tasks that I know are going to move the needle because I'm terrified of what that could actually mean. So it's super, super interesting when you become aware of your own patterns and your own limiting beliefs. And I agree with you. I think you need some level of support in to be able to reprogram those things, whether that is through like I do it through like a online course membership program that I'm part of. And there's like different workshops that you can do based on what your limiting beliefs are. I fully agree. Back, obviously, coaching, even therapies or cognitive behavioral therapy to try and reprogram some of those on like if you're really new to this subject, I think that can be really powerful. But it is so interesting when you gain a level of self-awareness and you start seeing all of these limiting beliefs and patterns showing up, and you're like, wow, okay, there's a lot here that's holding me back. And it can be really difficult to then make those changes, because it's one thing becoming self-aware and it's one thing knowing what you need to do, but obviously doing it is a whole different story. So what would you say that are like, if someone is stuck in one of these cycles, whether it be that they are procrastinating and doing all of the small tasks and not doing the big ones in their business, or it is that they're like holding out from posting content because they're scared of showing up and showing their voice, what would be like the first step for you if you're working with someone to start making really small but incremental changes to help someone shift the narrative and actually take the better actions?
Okay, so if we go back to the client I was talking about a minute ago who had the to-do list and she liked to tick things off, what I got her to start doing was, as she was walking towards her office each morning, and then again if she'd gone out over the lunch break, as she was walking towards her office after lunch, so literally as she's opening the door, saying to herself, I am the finance director and owner of my business and I need to take strategic action, so that she's starting to almost give herself a little pep talk to step away from the shitty admin that she really shouldn't have been doing. And that worked really, really well. Also, just having a break away from your desk, I think helps to recalibrate and reset and remind you of like what you're here to do. Because I think we can so easily get drawn into that to-do list because it's sitting next to us. and we just want to tick it off and tick it off and tick it off. When actually, when we step away and we just take a moment, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and we start to think, okay, what am I actually here to do today? Then we can come back with a sort of slightly renewed energy and then go through that to-do list and pick off the thing that's the most important thing for that day. And then just flip it. So you can still do the shitty admin, but just do it at the end of the day. Do the important stuff, the needle moving stuff at the beginning of the day, or when your energy's at its highest. For me, it's first thing in the morning. And I think for the vast majority of the population, it probably is in the morning when we haven't filled our brain with all sorts of other rubbish. The other thing that I really encourage my clients to do is really plan ahead and schedule as well. I'm not one for time blocking particularly, but just having a mental moment the night before, ready for the next day. So before you close the laptop, thinking, okay, what are the one or the two or the three really important things I'm going to do tomorrow, and get those written down so that when you then open the laptop the following day, you're already primed for that. You've almost subconsciously processed it overnight in your sleep as well. So that would be certainly one trick. And then the other trick is literally to just start with the easiest, smallest thing you can do, but that is needle moving. So not the easiest task you can do necessarily, but pick a difficult task, but what's the first easiest thing you can do in relation to that difficult task? So if it's posting on social media, what's the thing that's going to get something out there? So, it doesn't need to be a snazzy reel. It doesn't need to be you speaking to camera if that's not comfortable at the moment. Maybe it's just literally some words on a static Canva image, but you're getting something out there. And then that starts the momentum, because then you're like, "Oh, okay, that was safe. I'm okay. Nobody's trolling me in response to that post. Maybe I can do the next thing. Maybe I can start to put my face on a static post." And then we can build up to maybe getting a video out there, for example. But it's the next easiest step. Rather than worrying about step 12, we just want to do the next easiest one.
Yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, to get carried away and think about like the long-term vision and like what you don't have yet and all of the things that you are working towards. But actually, we just need to look at like, how are we going to get there? What's the next step that's actually going to get us one step closer to that, even if it's literally like 1% closer every single day? I feel like we just forget that. Like obviously, if you're an
Exactly.
entrepreneur, most likely you're a big dreamer. You've got big goals. You're a very ambitious person, most likely. So it's natural that our brain goes towards like the big goal first, but actually we need to almost break that big goal down into small goals so that we don't get overwhelmed in that process of like achieving that overnight. I'm very guilty personally of wanting to skip all of the bit in the middle and go from like where I am today to like where I want to be in 5 years' time. And then someone reflected that back to me quite recently and was like, yeah, but don't you just want to enjoy like the time right now? You're never going to get that back. And I was like, oh yeah, good point. And sometimes you just get caught up in life, and that's what happens. But I think if you can create a little bit more structure, like what you're saying around like create yourself a little bit more of a schedule, that can be really, really impactful and help you take at least one small step towards shifting that way of working, and also obviously impact positively your business, which is ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, what you want to probably do well with and where your goals are heading. That's really, really great advice there. And in terms of when someone comes to you, obviously you're hoping to catch that burnout before they get there. But in some cases, I imagine people are already at that burnout stage. So what would be some obvious signs of burnout that you usually identify with clients that you can help them kind of eliminate or backtrack on to stop the burnout from fully happening?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is when we're talking about burnout, we aren't talking about full burnout. Okay, that you and I, when we're describing burnout, we're talking probably there's a scale like 0 to 10. We're probably talking about a 7 or maybe an 8 on the scale. But true burnout, just for the listeners who aren't fully aware of the scale, true burnout is when you've got suicidal tendencies. So I'm hoping, Sophie, that's not as far down the scale as you guys. Certainly not for me. I hit just exhaustion and lethargy and no motivation for life or business, really, particularly my business. I just didn't have any want to be pouring more energy into my business. It completely just, the love for my business had completely disappeared, despite the fact, as I said earlier, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So lack of motivation is a big one. You mentioned it a little earlier on, but things like self-care slipping way, way down the priority list. So even to the point of not wanting to go and spend time with friends is often a signal that something's not right. So not eating well, disrupted sleep, not wanting to exercise, even if you used to be somebody who exercised a lot, it just all disappears off the agenda. What else? I mean, from a sort of more physiological standpoint, you've probably got quite a lot of tension in your body. You might not realize that it's there because it will have crept up on you, as you mentioned earlier. You're probably quite snappy, irritable, impatient. But yeah, exhaustion is a really big one. That's when most of us would describe ourselves as hitting burnout, because despite how much sleep we're getting, we're still tired. I don't think that's a physical tiredness that we're experiencing. I think that's an emotional tiredness that we're actually experiencing, because if it was physical tiredness, we would be able to resolve it by having a few really good nights sleep. So if we're not managing to resolve it by having a few really good nights sleep, there's something deeper going on there. And that for me is probably a bit of nervous system dysregulation. So you're in the constant fight or flight situation. And yeah, that lack of motivation and the lethargy all sort of feed into that. And I see it as an emotional tiredness, like an inner tiredness that we can only resolve by taking a step back and allowing ourselves to look after ourselves again for a little while.
Yeah, it's true. And something else that I experienced was actually, I'm experiencing it right now, actually, like I can't think, what's that word? Oh God, I've completely forgotten the word. Where you literally forget things. That was
Brain
it.
fog.
Memory. As if I've just done that, like when I'm talking about it. Yeah, memory loss is literally what is. So memory loss is one of my problem signs. And actually, I don't feel burnt out right now or about to hit a burnout, but clearly I just have memory loss in general. But it gets extra severe if I'm about to reach the burnout. Like I will literally walk into a room, have no idea why I'm in the room. Like I'll open an Excel spreadsheet and be like, what was I about to look at? Like I'll just lose all concept of anything that I'm actually meant to be doing. So I think that, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with all those symptoms. I've definitely experienced all of those as well. And the earlier, obviously, you can catch those and catch yourself figuring those out, the easier you're going to be able to figure it out, basically. So I think that's a really good awareness around some of the symptoms to look out for burnout. But it is frustrating that so many people let it get to a point of full burnout, or full burnout in the sense of the 80% that you're talking to, like the full exhaustion and all of the symptoms that you mentioned earlier, before they make a change. Like in an ideal world, they make the changes like you've mentioned today
Yeah, I know what you mean.
to
Yeah.
eliminate any chances of that burnout happening, because that would obviously be way more beneficial, specifically in the long run as well. And I know you also are balancing a lot going on. Obviously, you've gone through your own burnouts as well, but I know you're currently balancing obviously business, family, podcasting. You also do some speaking. Like, how do you personally structure your own business and your life to make sure that you are focusing on your well-being as well?
Well, it goes through phases, it's inevitable, right? I don't like to use this word, but I'm going to use it anyway because I think it's the easiest way to describe it. But I'm in a very busy phase at the moment. I've actually got 3 businesses, and we're also in the middle of a 6-month building project. So, it is full on. So I just make sure that I have a few minutes to myself every single day. I get up before I need to. I make sure I have at least half an hour to myself on my own before anybody else is up in my house. And that is sacrosanct. I do that 7 days a week. And when we're on holiday as well, I love to have just a bit of time just for me, just to sit quietly, no social media, no podcasts. I might put on some gentle grounding music or something like that, but no sort of direct input, as it were. I will take myself out on a walk most days. We do have a dog, which helps with that, of course, but walking is like a meditation for me. I mentioned this to you before we touched on the recording, but I use my walking time as a mental processing time. So sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's longer if I need it. Most days it's probably about half an hour. And those 2 things, possibly with a bit of journaling thrown in, are really my go-tos all the time, every day. And then on top of that, I try and build in a few times a week, I try and build in some form of more structured exercise. And then I'm just fueling myself well. And I do really prioritize my sleep, massively prioritize my sleep. And by doing those things, sometimes that means I don't hit my desk till 10 in the morning, which I've taken a while to adjust to because, so many of us are still in that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 mentality. And I always used to feel really guilty for not starting my working day until like 10 o'clock in the morning. But actually, that first hour or 2 hours or whatever is still work. It's just not sitting at my desk work. It's mental processing, it's subconscious thinking, it's inspiration. It helps me really focus and bring some creativity into my work. And it just allows me to be reset and ready for my day ahead. So I just naturally prioritize those things and have done for years. And yeah, as I said, sleep. I mean, my kids laugh at me because I'm always in bed before them. And like 9:30, I'm like, right, I'm going to bed to read my book now. And they just think it's hilarious. But I just think sleep is so foundational to everything else. It's the thing that everything else is layered on top of. If you get good sleep, everything else sort of naturally follows suit afterwards, really.
I completely agree. Like sleep is literally the foundation of everything, a foundation of our well-being. And I have a business partner actually in another business that I run, and she always says that we have to treat ourselves like a plant. We have to water ourselves, we have to feed ourselves, put ourselves in the right environment, and what's the other one? Give some sunlight, right? So that we can actually thrive in the environment that we're in. And I think sleep is part of that. And yeah, it really is the foundation of everything that we do. And it's really important. It's definitely something that I've actually struggled with. Like my morning routine is on point. My evening routine and my wind down part, I really still have a little bit of work to do. And I also feel the same way that you do around like that guilt around not working first thing in the morning. I don't work in the morning. I really prioritize myself in the morning. I actually don't start work until about 11, sometimes 12 o'clock. But then I will usually, because I'm on a different time zone, I usually work during the evening. So I kind of make that up. My hours are a little bit more nocturnal, but I really would love to get into a better sleep routine because I do understand how important it is, and I want to follow your suit of getting into bed at 9:30 and reading a book. You've given some really good advice in this session, so thank you so much. It's been really helpful and inspiring to hear how you've overcome burnout, how you're helping other people overcome burnout. If there was one thing that you could give someone to take away from this episode to go and implement in their lives to make sure that they avoid the burnout at all costs, what would you suggest someone go and do today?
Well, I think it has to come back to sleep. Honestly, I just think when you get good sleep, you then naturally eat better, move better, you're more focused, your brain will be firing on all cylinders. So your business mind will be doing what it needs to do to build your business, and you will have more energy and more patience around the people that you love as well. So sleep, and therefore to get that good sleep, as you just mentioned, a really good evening routine that allows your body to actually go into those deeper phases of sleep. So I know lots of people talk about 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and I know there's a lot of scientific research around that, and I don't disagree with any of that. But if that 7 to 9 hours in bed is shocking quality of sleep, then you're not really getting the sleep that you need. So yeah, a good hour, minimum of an hour really before you climb into bed. We need to be off screens and not being stimulated by external sources, really, just allowing our bodies to rest and digest so that we can then drift off into a lovely deep sleep and wake up the next day feeling energized and raring to go.
Amazing. I'm definitely going to be trying to implement more of that in my own personal life. And I think that's a really easy one for people to action, and really great advice that you've been giving. So thank you so much for joining me today. If anyone wants to connect with you further, how can they get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is via Instagram. So on Instagram, I'm suerichards.coaching.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully it's helped inform some people about the burnout and how to prevent it.